Yo, hey guys, welcome back to another video. This one is going to be a little different. This is going to be a statue tier list video. You guys were asking about the statues and how good they are and talking about putting them in like a tier list. So we got our statues over here. We got the explanations of what they do, and we're going to be kind of grading each of them and put them into the respective tiers. So we'll start off, we have Kyra. So I'm gonna do like I guess like a scorecard for each. So Kyra has a build effect, or they all have a build effect and they also have an upgrade effect. I use different words. I did passive effect, ranking effect, but it'll be kind of the same thing. So build effect is 20% faster primary with attacks and a 50% chance to fire 2 arrows dealing 10 physical damage. This scales up with skill power, so it's a little awkward that you're using a primary attack and then you're having another thing that scales with skill power. If this was, considered a primary type thing, like the chapel bonus, then this would be really good. But the only way I can really think to use this is just you're scaling your primary attack speed so you can get more arrows out faster, which seems okay. But the base damage starts at 10, and you can scale it up and scale it up with some more skill power. So I guess we'll first start off with the passive effect. The passive effect is really good. Even at level 1, it's basically god tier. Like you you craft the statue and you have 20% faster attack. That is pretty much comparable with every other damage statue. Callos is one that a lot of other primary builds use. So is this enough damage to where if you attack 20% slower, it's going to outscale it? And you can use them together as well. So it's a really good statue, even just for this. So as you rank it up, it doesn't quite get as good. We can kind of think about that. So if we look here and we do like a effective over time, so we can say this is like as you upgrade it, and this is as your NG goes higher. So we'll have NG over here, and this will just be upgrades. All right. So move this out of the way a little bit. So this will be your upgrade over time. So for the passive effect, it's going to be really good. Or you can even say this is like usefulness over time. Yeah, we'll change this to usefulness over time, just because upgrading it should make it more useful as you put more ore into it. So its passive effect, it starts out useful and it just stays useful the whole time. So that's really good. The upgrade effect, it does increase. It probably increases more like this. It goes from useless and gets better and better the more you put into it. But you have to be doing a lot of specific things like scaling skill power solely without doing any like cost analysis stuff. So overall, I'm going to give that one passive effect is like easily a 5. It's like super good. Ranking effect, I'm going to put it kind of low. I don't think it's really viable right now to try to scale skills without cost. And since this is a proc, you can't really scale it with cost, so it's not going to be effective at the high ranks of the game unless you can just get an absurd level to where the base amount is so huge that when you multiply it by enough skill power, it's going to be good. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 there. So that's the ranking effect. Effectiveness over time is kind of a question mark. No one's really pushed the statue that high because you really just want the passive effect. So I'm going to give this one like a 2. I think the damage is good early, even from these procs, like a NG0, NG2 maybe. But then you start getting like 10, NG20. As your statue falls behind in levels, this damage is going to fall off. Because you only get 4 per level, so level 10 you should have 40 damage, and level 20 you have 80 damage, but things are going to start outscaling that because most skills in the game do like 25 or so damage baseline, like Thief primary, Paladin primary, and you add Incendiary Demise and it does like 60, 65, and then you start scaling it up from there. But this is there's not a lot of room to scale from here, as far as I've seen, at least with the skill power. And it's just kind of awkward that this is for primary attack and this does skilled things. So if this is both primary, I'd see a lot more useful that you could scale it. But it's definitely an interesting one. And then activation. This is pretty easy to activate. I mean, if you have a 50% chance, so it kind of forces you to go like a luck base to get that chance even higher. But the activation's pretty easy, so I'm going to do like a 4 out of 5. It's not perfect, but it's there. So overall, we will say that this is like a, let me give this a solid B, at least to start. Maybe as we put more in, it'll go higher or lower, but I think it's a solid B. It's just so good. It can compete with a lot of the statues late game, and it's pretty good early game. So mainly just because it's passive effect. This you can kind of just completely ignore. So I put it in a B just because it doesn't have a secondary effect that's really viable. Next statue is Fairylaughs. So the build effect lowers the health of an enemy attacker by 5% when evading. So evasion's pretty good on all characters. It's really good in the meta right now. So that's kind of like just a useful effect to have. It's kind of it's definitely RNG, but it does lower the attacker when evading. And so anytime you evade, you're going to lower its attack, which is pretty nice, but kind of RNG, and you got to get the right items and whatnot. Upgrade effect, each level of the statue increases the damage done to disarm and stunned enemies by 5. So this actually works really well with a lot of characters. So disarm and stunned is not going to work with certain characters, but some have it baked into their skill kit, like Gladiator has their nets, which disarms. The Paladin has a stunning blows, which stuns. And then you even have Thief has smoke bomb and base evasion. Ranger has base evasion, so it works well with some characters. Other ones you kind of you have to go out of your way if you wanted to make it work. Like I wouldn't really put this on like a warlock character because you have to get evasion, you have to get away to stun, you have to jump through a lot of hoops to make it work. So it works really well on some characters, but not all characters. So we'll say the activation is pretty easy, but it only works on some characters. So I'm gonna go with maybe a 3 out of 5. Let's put in the date. All right, whatever. I think you guys get it. Maybe we just don't need any of this. We just clear these out. Your contents. So this is all just going to be out of 5. So damage is 5. Passive effect, what do we say? That's a 5 as well. Raking effect, I think we gave it a 3. Effectiveness over time was like a 2. And activation was a 4. It's pretty easy to activate. It's still grabbing these dates. Okay. That's annoying. Alright, we'll just change these 5s to whatever. So 5, 5, ranking effect. So that was a 3. Effectiveness over time is a 2, and then activation was a 4. Alright, so Fairylaughs, the activation is going to be kind of on the lower end. It works well with some characters, like 4 out of 9 of the characters, right? Because Gladiator, Thief, Paladin, maybe only 3 actually. Oh, and then I guess Ranger has evasion, so it kind of works with that. So I'm going to put this kind of on the low end. It's pretty niche, so we'll do a 3. Effectiveness over time, it's pretty good. It gets 5 statue levels per. So I'm going to give that a 4. It's not the best in terms of damage, but it's pretty like standard. This is a very standard statue. Ranking effect, kind of the same thing. 4. Passive effect, we'll give it like a 4 as well. I think this one's just going to get 4 across the board. Damage is actually going to be a little lower. I'm going to put it as a 4 because certain statues do a little more. So let's see, where do we actually want to put this on our list then? I think Fairylaughs is going to be a little better than Kyra just because you can put more into it and you'll get more out of it. So Fairylaughs is going to be in the A tier. Now we're going to move on to Cedric. Cedric has a built-in effect. Picking up mana crystals increases your mana regen and resistance by 20% for 30 seconds. So the only thing about this passive effect, I mean, it works on everyone. And it ties into his upgrade effect. His upgrade effect is each level of the statue adds 5% of your resist to your skill power. So as you pick up a mana crystal, you're going to get resist. And that resist will give you skill power, right? The only thing about this is I kind of just think the passive effect is on the low end. It is percentage resist, which is nice, and it gives you mana regen, which is alright, but versus boss fights, when I really think these things need to shine, that's kind of on the low end. So the passive effect, I'm gonna give it like a 3 here. Ranking effect is actually really good because it scales with like another stat, so you can increase your defense to increase your offense. So that's going to be a 5 for sure. Effectiveness over time is going to be a 5, and to activate, all you have to do is pick up a mana crystal. That's okay, but really, the activation isn't for the first part, it's for the second. And so this is just passive, so activation is a 5. It just works all the time. Which I guess is kind of similar to Fairylaughs. That one works all the time. But this is like an extra thing. And I mean, you still have to stun and disarm, so I still stand behind the 3 for activation on that one. But this one's just passive, so pretty easy. So Cedric is 5-3-5-5-5. I think that is correct. Yeah, so Cedric is one of the like crazier statues. So, you know, this one is actually going to be S tier. It's up there. You can maybe argue that it should be an A tier or something like that, but from what I've seen, actually, yeah, maybe it is A tier because we do have better statues. So we're putting an A tier, but it's basically mandatory. I guess in that case, we should do mandatory A tier. S tier is just better than A tier. And then we have B tier is not mandatory, but still really good. So maybe it's more like this, but Kyra's on the low end of B. All right, so we'll do that. I'm happier with that. Callos, he's basically the primary version of Cedric. He gives you attack power based on your armor percentage, and his build effect is to block most projectiles. So this is like a really good defensive option, block most projectiles. I mean, I would say his passive effect is easily a 5. His damage is going to be a 5 as well. It's going to basically mirror Cedric, except he has an easier passive effect. Passive effect that works against some bosses. I guess maybe not actually, because all the projectiles, except for maybe the vampire, can't really be blocked by this kind of stuff. So I guess just to be in line with Cedric, we should keep the activation the same, because they're not going to work on bosses, but everything else will. And yeah, activation is just passive, so it's easy there. So Callos, since it's so similar to Cedric, it's just going up right there with it. It's if you're primary, you're taking this one. If you're skill-based, you're going to take that one, like 100% of the time. All right, next up we have Erwin. What is there to really say about Erwin? We'll read it. We'll read its effects. So 7.5% chance to freeze enemies on primary attack. That's his activated effect. It's only primary attack, so it's a little awkward. So you want to use this on like a melee type character, but most of them have a way to do something similar to freeze, like stun, disarm. Even Ranger has a way to root. So you don't really care about freezing with your, especially with your primary. I couldn't really imagine a thief taking this just to try to get the freeze. So as far as his passive effect, it's going to be a 1. It's not worthless, but it's just too much redundancy, and for a statue, that's basically garbage. Let's also look at its other parts. So upgrade effect, each level of the statue increases damage done by frozen enemies by 5%. So it has the damage of the ranking effect, similar to Fairylaughs. Still 5% damage, so I'm gonna put it at 4. But it's just the way to activate it is really awkward. So I'm gonna put its effectiveness over the time is also gonna be a 4, since it's just less damage than other statues. And its activation is gonna be basically terrible. It doesn't work on bosses, like no bosses can be frozen. So it's just going to go really low. You're not going to get this damage boost like you want, and you can only get it from primary attacks. If this is primary and skills, it'd be a little more interesting. But as it is, it doesn't work against bosses, and it only works with primary, and primary attacks just do not care about this effect. So it is what it is. So unfortunately, Erwin, gotta look at the picture. Erwin is just D tier. Worst tier you can get. It's probably the one that needs a rework the most too. Wilmar. So that's our next statue. Build effect, 20% faster skills. So this is just a good effect. It's kind of similar to the Kyra effect, where you have 20% faster attacks. So this is the same kind of thing. You get essentially a cooldown reduction on your statues, which is a pretty interesting effect that's kind of hard to get anywhere else. So I'm gonna give it its passive effect is going to be at least equal to Kyra. So that's going to be an easy 5. Ranking effect, each level of the statue adds 5% of the skill cost as damage to your skills. So that is just passive effect, adds flat damage to your skills, so that's amazing. Effectiveness over time is going to be a 5. It's similar to Callos and Cedric in that way, where where they just give you the flat amount equal to something else. This is a flat amount just equal to your skill cost. It's kind of an interesting way to get damage because the primary attackers don't have any way to kind of replicate this. There's no primary version of this, so I think this statue is in a tier of its own, just because in theory, since you can use Wilmar with Cedric, you're getting the flat damage added to your skill power, similar to how the Callos statue gives it to the primary. So primary builds are going to be using Callos, and maybe like Kyra for the faster primary. Well, Wilmar also gets to get the faster skills, so far we're equal with skills and primary. But then you have this second ability that gets added on that's going to push it to the next level that Kyra can't do. So even if you attach another statue to your 3 statue limit, you're still not going to get this level of damage out of a statue. So what I theorize would happen as you increase the statue's level, all characters are probably going to shift to a skill-based class, just because you can scale up skill cost really well, and the statue will just keep increasing. So your skills start out at a certain level, then you add a bunch of skill costs to it, and then your mana pool increases and your mana regen increases. So your skill cost will stay the same, but your mana pool and everything will continue to get larger. So you're going to be able to not have a drawback from having really expensive spells. And this is just going to give you a huge payoff for having really expensive spells. So let's go ahead and put him in a tier. So Wilmar is S tier. He's in a league all on his own. If Kyra had something similar, it would easily jump from B tier to S tier. Easily. Ozreth is our next statue. So build effect, 20% chance of enemies leaving Poison Cloud when killed, lasts for 4 seconds. Alright, so that's kind of interesting. You get a little Poison Cloud. The damage of that is kind of whatever, but it ties into its next part. Each level of the statue increases damage done to poison enemies by 10%. The poison is a pretty good debuff. It applies to most enemies, including a lot of the bosses. So Ozreth is another tier above, let's say, Fairylaughs, just because you can activate it on bosses. You can't really stun or disarm bosses. So Ozreth is going to be probably a 5 for activation. As long as you kill another enemy, if you kill enough enemies, you're going to leave a poison cloud, and the rest of the enemies are going to be poisoned. And it also increases the damage by 10% instead of 5. So that's why we have the ranking effect. Instead of having 4 for like Erwin and Fairylaughs, Ozreth is going to be a 5 because he has double the damage. So going through these hoops is twice as effective for Ozreth, and it's built in. So instead of having to, you can freeze with your primary attack, sure, maybe you can play the sorcerer and you can freeze some things, but your payoff is still only 5%. Fairylaughs kind of works the same way. Sure, your character might have built-in disarm or stun, but you're still only getting this 5%, and you can add this other damage. Very RNG, but you also have to have evasion. So it just takes a lot more to get it activated. But this one, it's all baked in together. You take this on any class, and it's going to give you a way to poison enemies. It's going to work for most enemies, and it's going to give you the most damage payoff for poisoning things. So let's look at the numbers. Damage, it's going to be a 5. It's higher damage than all the other ones. Passive effect, it's just good. Could be better, I guess. It could have a higher chance. Some would do a 4. It doesn't just apply poison. So you're not guaranteed against bosses, but most bosses summon some kind of adds. So if you're really struggling for damage, you can kill an add and get the poison eventually, and you're going to have this damage upgrade. Ranking effect is basically the best, besides the ones that just give flat damage, like Wilmar, Cedric, and Callos. This one gives you the highest percent damage, so that one's still going to be 5 for damage. Effectiveness over time, it's the highest damage, so again, 5. Activation, it's the easiest, it's all baked in. You don't have to take any extra items. You could take extra items and makes it even easier, like picking up Caustic Arrow on like a primary build, or getting Caustic Touch on like a skill-based build. You're gonna easily be able to activate this poison stuff. Alright, so let's put him in a tier. So Ozreth, he's got to be up here in the A tier. So these guys, this guy does 5% damage. This guy also does 5% damage, but his activation holds him back. And yeah, he's up here with the big boys to give you flat damage. He's the next one in line, in my opinion. And it kind of holds true. Like, I recommend going Wilmar, Cedric, and Ozreth on spellcaster builds, and then we have Callos, Ozreth, and Kyra for primary builds, or you can also go Fairylaughs if you're playing like a paladin, if you're playing a gladiator, or if you're playing like a thief. It's like an easy one to get. Also Ranger, just for the evasion. You can also switch these like during bosses too. If you're playing solo mode, you can log out, switch the statue, log back in. I really haven't ever had to do that, but these are basically all the statues I would actually play with, at least so far. So now we move into Bolgarth. Bolgarth's a little different. So his build effect is every 5th primary attack in combo triggers a combo blast that deals 100 magical damage. So this is considered skill-based damage. So this scales with skills, but it's activated on primary, which kind of has been a theme that we've been seeing, right? Like Kyra affects your primary, but gives you a skill. What else do we have? We have Erwin affects your primary, but gives you damage that you can't really get from this. I mean, I guess you can, but it just doesn't work against bosses, so it's really awkward. This works against all enemies. This is one that we actually probably want to look at the graph for. So if we look at this one, so this is going to be, as your NG levels go higher, this is going to be the effectiveness. So it actually starts off really high effectiveness, and as you go up in NG, it just kind of, it should tank, right? So it's going to start off effective, then go down. That's just because this is hard to scale with like an attack build, and it's hard to get 5 attacks on a skill-based build. So it's just kind of awkward how it works together. But early game, it's great. It's super good early game. So Bolgarth, damage, really good early, but it falls off. So I guess I can keep the damage high. That's just to kind of show that it like has damage in general, which they all basically do. Maybe we don't need a damage column. Passive effect is this, right? So this, I'm gonna put it as like a 2, I guess. The passive effect's okay. It just doesn't really make sense. If you're doing primary, it does start out at 100 base damage. So that's a lot of damage early game, and it scales. So if you're playing like a thief early and you're using Bolgarth, it's going to trigger the combo blast around you, and you're actually going to be able to benefit from, you know, your skill power and your skill crit and all that. So it's kind of nice, it scales, but eventually your primary attack damage is going to get so high that this extra 100 is going to be meaningless. So that's why I would say that his passive effect is a 2, which makes his effectiveness over time kind of low. He's probably one of the worst effectiveness over time as far as like the either part. Actually, we should read the rest of it. So upgrade effect, each level of the statue increases the time to maintain combo by 0.5 seconds. So this is one of those that you kind of hit like a hard cap unless you're doing something really weird. Normally in low NGs, you're not able to sustain combo, so this will help you increase the time, but the main ways you're getting into combo, at least like NG 0, is going to be just from killing enemies. So this is going to increase the time you have to kill enemies. That's kind of great. It doesn't do a lot against bosses. Other ways to get in combo in NG like 2, you can use Amulet of Vengeance, or maybe use Phonetic Eruption, and you'll stay in combo in bosses versus that, but maybe you're not hitting fast enough, you're not hitting that 5% chance with Phonetic Eruption, even with luck and, you know, a lot of crit to sustain, so maybe you want to use Bolgarth. So like, let's say level 10 Bolgarth gives you an extra 5 seconds. Hopefully in that 5 seconds, you're able to re-trigger combo and have combo 100% of the time. After you've achieved 100% combo, there's no point in updating the statue anymore. The only thing even interesting I could think about to do with this is you level it to like 100, 200 or something, which is just going to be an insane amount of ore. And if you get it up to 100, you have an extra 50 seconds in combo, which maybe you could do something weird with that, where you get in combo from an enemy and you run through the whole floor in 50 seconds, but you're still going to have the issue against like bosses of getting back into combo, because you're going to be taken out of combo when you transition the floor, I believe. Either way, you'd have to kill the boss in 50 seconds while staying in combo, and you have no other way to get back in combo. Just seems kind of weird. So yeah, his effectiveness over time is very low, just because after, I would say, after level 10 Bolgarth, it becomes worthless. And its activation is pretty easy. I mean, it doesn't put you in combo, which could help, but it's all kind of baked in together. Everyone uses their primary attack some, but the faster you scale this, the more damage you're going to get out of this part. But the more of a skill-based character you are, the more damage this part's going to do. So it's like a yin and yang type of statue. But really, we're only going to look at it for this. It's just an easy way to help out early characters stay in combo so they can do things better. So Bolgarth, even though it's really good at early game, he kind of falls into the C tier. He's not terrible. He's just only good for a very short amount of time. I would say at max he's good from NG2 to NG10. After that, his damage is going to fall off. You're going to get high enough luck and crit and attunements that you're going to stay in combo even without him. And then you're going to want to switch away from him and take a Kyra level 1. If you're a primary build, you're going to want to take the trinity between Wilmar, Osreth, and Cedric for spellcaster builds. Maybe you could use them for a while you're leveling up Cedric, or sorry, while you're leveling up Wilmar. When your skill cost, when you're able to actually support your skill cost, then you switch him out, bring in Wilmar. So that's going to bring us to our last statue, and this one was released in the DLC for the Witch Hunter. So the build effect, damage dealt to enemies that are burning has a 10% chance to also inflict bleeding. Off the bat, this passive effect is terrible. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. So I'm going to put this at a 1. Even though a lot of bosses can be bled, they can be burning and all that kind of stuff, it's not giving you the way to deal burning. It's just saying you have a 10% chance to also inflict bleeding. Bleeding does like no damage. There's not really any good ways to scale it. You don't get a lot of payoffs even for doing it. The only thing you can really do is like bloodletter, and the enemies move like a little slower, but you'd have to kite, and there's not a lot of bosses you can really kite that's going to do a lot of damage. You're just going to get way more damage out of these other statues. So ranking effect, upgrade effect, each level of the statue increases damage done to burning enemies by 5%. So we're back to the 5% thing. So I'm going to put this one as a 4, just for that. There are ways to activate burning. Some characters do it automatically. Wizard and Witch Hunter come to mind. There's some... I don't think there's any drinks that let you do burning, but there's some items with, was it Flame Tongue and the cape, burning cape, whatever it's called, cape of the Flame Walker. So you could sacrifice an item to get this working, but I don't know. I know people use this at like super high level. I haven't tested that, but I guess when you have enough damage, it's like a way to go, because it automatically activates with one item, whereas like Osreth you have to kill enemies but you get double the damage. So it's really to the point where you have so much extra damage that you just need this extra damage instantly, and you don't have time to kill things, or you don't want to spend time killing things to proc this to sometimes have it. So you just pick Darien instead and get the damage instantly by sacrificing an item. So that would put his like activation lower. It's going to be like a 2, because you have to give up an item to activate him. You also have to take this statue, which is like half damage. But I would say his effectiveness over time is probably high, just because he's the fastest way to apply like a damage buff. Some of the other ones are pretty quick, but not quite as fast. Like you have to stun or disarm, but that doesn't work against bosses. You have Erwin, where you have to freeze, but it doesn't work against bosses. You have Osreth, does work against bosses, but only has a 20% chance, and the boss has to have ads. You have to kill the ads close to the boss to get the poison cloud. It only lasts for 4 seconds. And then you have this one where most, actually all bosses can be burned. So this is like the easiest way to get damage on bosses. So that's going to kind of boost it a little bit. I'll actually put it up here just for late game. So it's going to go in the A tier. And that's going to wrap up our tier list. So, I mean, some of these could probably move around. Like Darien could move back and forth. I think we have a solid S tier and A tier. B tier and A tier are pretty close. It's just these three up here are flat damage. This one is twice the damage. And these are all easy to activate. So they just get really high. This is the next easiest to activate. This one's really good, even at level 1. Scales up really nicely. Its secondary effect is kind of whatever, so maybe Darien would go here. Then we have this one, it's really easy to activate, and it does the same amount of damage as Fairylaughs. You don't get the extra damage of Fairylaughs with evading, so that's kind of up to you. This technically has extra damage with bleeding, but there's really no way to scale it very well. At least not that I know of. Next up you have Bolgarth, really good early, like kind of in the A tier early, but it falls off late, which is going to cost them, some points over time. And there's Erwin, which just has no applicable use in the whole game. But anyway, that's the tier list for everyone. I'm glad you guys watched the video, and let me know if you agree with this or if you would change some things around. What you think with my analysis of all of them? Maybe I missed some things, and yeah, just let me know. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more videos like this, please like, follow, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next one.